Hi, I'm Christopher Bolton, a production designer from South Africa. Welcome to this series of MSD5 tutorials. Let's get started. Welcome to this edition of the MSD5 tutorials. In this edition, I'm going to illustrate to you how to go about using dynamic objects. What I've done in this model, as you can see, is I've put the car onto a cylinder, which will emulate a revolve stage. The first thing you do is maximize this window. I'm going to show you how to use a rotator. I've centered my car on the revolve around the X, Y, and Z axis. This just makes it easier to work with. I then go to my front view. I come to Insert, click on Insert, go to Dynamic Objects, and insert a rotator. In this example, I'm going to use a large one. Now that you have chosen that, I rotate it around and bring it up closer to the model. Select the object, select the top part of the rotator, normally it's the smaller one, and attach it. What that now does is it has attached the rotator to the object. I then click on the bottom part, not the top part. I then go to Properties and access the rotator properties itself. Within the rotator properties, you can go to Dynamic Setup. This is where you can add in a DMX map. You can see here I've already added one in. Let me just show you how I did it. I selected motor 1. I gave it the DMX address. I told it under unit to use the angle as a value. In this example, 1024 degrees. You click on OK. I then select which DMX motor I wanted to follow. In this case, it's going to be 1. I then go to my rotator settings. Here I put in the maximum rotation value of 1024 degrees. As I said, I've given the DMX address 1. If I then use Light Jockey, I can apply it. You can then see that I've attached my rotator to that value. Keeping in mind that 0 will be 0 degrees and 255 will be your 1024 degrees. To make it rotate, it's very easy to do. You come to the program you use, whether it be Light Jockey or Maxis or whatever controller you prefer to use, and program 2 easy steps. 1 being 0, and the second being your maximum value. You will then see the rotator will be rotating around that axis. The next thing I'd like to illustrate is how to go about using the Hoist platforms. Let's maximize this window. I went into the modeler and created a reveal. Let me insert that. Put that in place. It's important to know that if you intend on adding in fixtures, you need to do that before attaching the Hoist platform. For now, let me add in some fixtures. Now that I have all my fixtures in, the next thing I want to create is an assembly. The best way to go about this is select all your fixtures, highlight the main assembly, and click on Assemble. Now you can see that you can still individually affect each of the properties of the fixtures, as well as having the actual structure as a whole. Now that I've done that, let me add in my hoists. You go to Insert, click on the screen, go to Dynamic Objects, and click on Hoist. I'm going to use a medium-sized hoist for this example. The hoists are pretty much the same, it's just for realistic value that they are different sizes. You then go into Properties of the hoist, go to Hoist Settings, type in your virtual length of your chain. In this case I'm going to make it 4,000. What this means is that the maximum value is 10,000 but the virtual length will be 4,000. I then go into Dynamic Setup, click on my DMX map, then add another DMX map. I then click on it, change the DMX address to 2. Under the unit, I'm going to put in distance and a value of 4,000. Here, under the Dynamic Setup, you have to assign that motor to the DMX map. Once you apply that, you will now see that this chain here has disappeared. If you bring it up on channel 2, you will see the chain extending. Now that I've got that, I can move it into position and copy the same motor with all the same parameters and presets into place. I then come to my front view, highlight the selected picks, click on my truss, select that, then click on one of the picks and attach it. I can now show you how easy it is to animate these dynamic objects. Once again, I have set the address and light jockey DMX1 to the rotator and DMX2 to the hoist. You can now see that in my sequence queue, the first ones are set to maximum value. I can put in a time there. I'll add in a step, pull those down, also do it over 60 seconds, and now you can see how the animation is working. The next thing I'd like to illustrate is how to use a hoist platform. Maximize this window. I'm going to insert a piece of truss. Let's use this circle piece. Add in a fixture. Create an assembly. Move that into place. I then add in a hoist platform. You can do that same place. Insert, Dynamic Objects, Hoist Platform. By default, the hoist platform will give you 3 motors. You can change that by clicking on the fixed object, going into Properties, coming to Hoist Platform and deleting one of these. What that'll do is, as you can see, it'll create 2 motors instead of 3. What I can then do is in the same way. You come in, let's move this up to the right height. I then click on the individual motors, go into Properties in the same way, add in its virtual length. In this case, I'll make it 6,000. And this one here, the hoist settings are going to be 4,000. Once I've got that far, I can now attach this bar to the truss. This bar will not be visible in the offline visualizer or when you render. It's purely there so that you can work easily with the model. Once I've selected that pick, I can attach it. Now the whole assembly is attached as one. The next thing to do is go to your motor map. You can also access your motor map by going to DMX, Motor Map. I've created 2 motors here, 3 and 4. I put in the values there. If I click on this one here, right click, Properties, Dynamic Setup, give that one number 3, and this one here number 4. If I now bring up all my channels, you will see that they will be there. When you're giving it the maximum DMX, it'll be where it is. The nice thing about doing that is that you can individually move these motors and you can therefore animate the truss, not just move it up or down. This entire group will already be grouped together. So we can pick it up here, copy it across, rotate that, put it into place. Let's shift this one across a bit. Now when we go back to the front view, you'll see that if I affect these values, they will both move up and down. You can have hours of fun playing with your moving trusses. Once again, let me illustrate to you how easy it is to animate it. Let's put these at the top for now. If I add in a step, let's make it over 60 seconds. Add that. Bring these values up and these values down. If I go to my 3D view, maximize this window. If I play that animation back, you can now see how the animation works. In this next section, I'd like to illustrate to you how to go about using a scalar. What I've done is I've added in a floor. As you can see in my front view, you can see that the floor is level so that it hides all the mechanics of the dynamic objects. Let's increase this window here. The first thing you want to do is create a 3D flame, or in this case, I'm going to use fire. You can either create it yourself in the modeler, or you can access this on Google's SketchUp website, which is where I found this one. You then put it in line with the floor. In this case, you can then size it to the size you want it to be, depending on how big you want your flames to go. You then insert your scalar, come to Dynamic Objects, choose Scalar. I'm going to choose a large one for now, just to make the illustration easier. It then puts a little block underneath. You want to ensure that your alignment is correct. You can do that by going to Movement and moving your object directly underneath your actual 3D object or shape that you want it to scale. You then go to Front View, go to your Properties. In your scalar settings here, you want to give it how much you want it to increase or decrease the scale by. I'm going to put in a value of 10. Apply that. Come to Dynamic Setup. Under DMX Map, I've created a motor that is DMX address 5. I put the address in here and given it a value of 100 underneath your value range. Once you do that, you can assign it to motor 5. Apply that. You then come to your DMX source, and you can see here, if I bring the channel down, it makes that go away. You then attach that part of the flame to the actual scalar. Now that you have that, you can have some fun by making it disappear. Let me give an example of how you can actually illustrate that. Let me come to my top view here. I then duplicate the entire scaling object that I've just created and place it wherever I want to place it. I then go to my 3D window. I'd like to quickly illustrate to you how you could actually animate that scalar. As you can see, when the DMX value is down, all the way, the object is missing. If you bring up the DMX value, it will increase the flame to the full scale size. The full scale size is the size that you make the flame originally before you scale it down. For now, let's bring this value down. Add in another step, which I'm going to do over about a second, to make it a bit more realistic. Add in another step, and take it away. If I play this animation back, this is what it'll look like. It's pretty much up to your imagination what you want to do with those scalars. Last, and certainly not least, I'd like to illustrate to you guys how to go about using a track or beam. What I've done here is add in a ramp in a car. The idea is to make the car drive down the ramp. You can do that by going to Dynamic Objects, Track. I'm going to use a virtual track for this example, but you can also use beams and I-beams to emulate curtain tracks and moving sets, etc. Because it's a virtual track, it will not be visible in the offline. I put that there, rotate it around, move it into place. I use the pick on the track as the point of reference to where I want this track to start, and put it in place in relation to the car. I then click on Edit Spline. What Edit Spline allows you to do is to stretch these markers to where you want them to go. I want it to go a little bit past so that the car can drive down. I then go to View, Spline List, and I can now add in a point. When it adds in a point, it'll copy the distance from the previous point. I then stretch it to about there. You will now see it bows the track slightly, which gives the motion a bit more of a smoother feel. You can, however, change that by adding in more points on the spline list. Once you've got that, click on the track again, add in a point, and then manipulate it to where you want it to go. In this case, I want the car to stop here. What I've effectively done is that I have created a track for the car to run on. I then bring my car down a bit, and as before, connect the pick to the movable object. Select that, click on the pick, and attach it using this hook. Now that it's attached, the next thing to do is assign a motor to this dynamic object, just like I did with all the others. Go to DMX, Motor Map. I've created one here already. It'll be DMX address 6. I put in a maximum value of 4000, which doesn't really apply, as long as you have chosen the distance here as a value on the right hand side. Click on this here, go to Properties, Dynamic Setup, and assign it to Motor Map 6. Once you click on Apply and bring my DMX source up, you will now see that when I send DMX on channel 6, the car will now move. You can have hours of fun playing with this, and it has multiple or many applications where you can use it. What I then normally do, just to make it a bit more realistic, is I move the group down so that the track is below the staging. Now if I go to my 3D view, you can see that the track is not visible. If I zoom out, I can now make this vehicle move up and down the ramp. That concludes this series of MSD5 tutorials. Look out for the next series where I'll be dealing with some more advanced aspects of the software and a whole range of tips and tricks.